One of the reasons is VCs are putting so much pressure and putting unrealistic targets on companies. But the other reason I think is that AEs, sales professionals, aren't putting themselves in a position to win. And they don't really understand. I don't know that everybody really understands how many different sales roles there are out there because we forced them all into this SDR role. Are you better over the phone? I hired a guy for a client up in Buffalo. And when we started to talk about outreach, he goes, I'm a wizard on the phone. I'll send a couple emails just because it's probably the right thing to do, but I'm going to call because I'm just good on the phone. He knew. And so had in the interview, I said to him like, oh no, like our process is only 2 calls and 5 emails. I was so rigid about my process. But I'm like, oh, but he let me know what his superpower was. And I'm like, okay, let's build you a different process to play to your strengths.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where the best sales teams mine closed losses for gold, because every deal you didn't win teaches you how to close the ones that really matter. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. When a deal goes cold, is it really dead or just waiting for the right nudge? I actually had one come back alive this last week. The sales rep said it was toast, and we kind of left it there. And then they reached back out after getting just a nurture email like, hey, we actually do want to go with you. That's a cool thing. Most sales teams just write off close loss deals as gone for good. And there's a lot of those close loss, close no action. But in this episode, we're going to flip that narrative because the truth is many deals don't fall apart because of strong competitors. They just stall out due to silence, indecision, or just bad timing. And that means that there is still opportunity on the table for you and for me both. We break down a smarter way to view these deals using the NRNS mindset. Not right now, still. You'll learn how to design a 7-touch re-engagement strategy that keeps things warm without sounding desperate, while actually adding value that moves the conversation forward. From sending thoughtful resources to building long game trust, we talk about the shift from pestering to positioning and why real sales pros treat follow-up as an art, not an afterthought. Plus, we dig into the culture behind the strategy, where reps are empowered to self source and own their pipeline instead of just reacting to it. So, if your CRM is full of deals marked lost that don't feel quite finished yet, this episode is your roadmap to bringing them back to life. Let's dive in. Our founder on Tuesday was Aaron Godby. Aaron is the founder and CEO of Green Irony, an AI consultancy on a mission to turn hype into hard results. He talked about how cutting through the noise and helping businesses integrate AI in ways that truly transform, not just automate. If you're navigating the brave new world of AI, Aaron's insights offer a strategic North Star. Our expert guest last week was Qasim Aslam. Awesome Qasim. Qasim is a master of scale, systems, and smart delegation. In our conversation, he dropped wisdom on how hiring decisions shape culture and how to build leverage through intentional leadership. His best-selling book, The 7 Critical Principles of Effective Digital Marketing, is a must-read for modern founders and CMOs alike. If you missed either of those episodes, go back because there is so much good stuff in there. My guest today is Kristie Jones. She is a powerhouse sales coach who's been reshaping the sales culture in B2B SaaS for over 20 years. Kristie doesn't just fix broken pipelines. She builds high-performing, accountable sales teams from the ground up. Her focus? Helping sales pros discover their superpowers and align with roles that let them crush quotas and outpace their peers. She's the author of Selling Your Way In, a 2024 release that arms sellers with tools to thrive by playing to their strengths. Whether you're hiring, coaching, or closing, Kristie brings clarity, structure, and fire to your sales game. Welcome, Kristie Jones. Hey, Kristie, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hey, great to see you again.
You've spent a number of years helping B2B SaaS companies fix broken sales organizations, which is something that we all need help with. What's the core challenge you see over and over again in earlier stage startups?
I think lack of formal and documented structure around all sales processes. And then after that would be number two would be discipline, lack of
Mm,
discipline around working those. I say work the plan or the plan won't work. Inconsistent activity.
that's a big one. How do we become more consistent? What's the secret?
I think creating accountability culture. If everybody, I mean, you've gone to the trouble to formalize and document your processes, then set targets around those from an activity standpoint. I say the leading and the lagging indicators. As long as you've got those leading indicators goaled out, then really it's a matter of holding people accountable to what you know needs to be done. The thing I love most about sales is it's a math game a lot of times
Yeah.
at the early on. So that activity you can just do, I call it the reverse sales math, right? So take your end result, bump it all the way back down to how many emails and calls you need to make. And really, if you're not putting in the effort, so it's a will and skill game too. So
Yeah.
at the very beginning, it's a will game. You have to want to do it. You have to time block for it. I just came off of a training session a couple of days ago with some AEs who had not been asked before to self-source pipeline. And so for the very first time, they've been surprised that marketing and the SDRs are not bringing in as many leads as they would like to have appointments for. And so they're going to be asked to self source 20 to 25% of their pipeline. And I said, the number one failure point here is you not time blocking this, because I said, no, we all know prospecting sucks. And so
Yes.
if you don't have discipline around it, and it will all of a sudden the day will be gone and be like, oops, forgot to make a prospecting call. And so, but it really works. Like it's like compound interest, right? If you do it consistently over time, it compounds on you. And instead of just having talked to 50 people a week or 100 people a week, you've talked to 100,000 people a year. And that from that numbers game perspective, the law of large numbers comes into play.
Yeah. I think it's really smart to think about it that way and have the reps self, fill their pipeline
Yep.
at least somewhat, instead of just sitting back and relying on marketing. I think you learn a lot in those earlier conversations and really understand what it is that the people are looking for, and just really get a lot closer to the process. How do you get salespeople to buy into that when it's really easy just to sit back and wait for leads to come from marketing or SDRs and just be fed rather than go out and hunt?
Yeah, if you're wanting to make a certain amount of income, we always, as we're interviewing, on target earnings, right? On target earnings only gets you that number if you're hitting your target. And we're starting, I very rarely, in fairness, work with a company where marketing and the SDRs are bringing in so many appointments that you don't have to self source. In
Right.
fact, I'm hiring more and more what I call full cycle sellers,
Yeah.
where all you're doing is sourcing your own pipeline. And if marketing pops a winner every now and then, that's just cherry on top. But I think starting with low hanging fruit. So with this group who's not really done it before, I rolled out a new formal process for going after closed lost accounts. Let's start with going after warm
Yeah.
accounts. Why not go get the low hanging fruit first? And then I worked with the marketing team, and we're going to verticalize after that. In the next 3 weeks, we're going to start going after the manufacturing industry, which is one of their top industries. And when you look at their client profiles, a lot of them are in a manufacturing setting. And so we're going to spend a quarter going after manufacturing. And so I think the other thing that I would say is that the spray and pray approach in years past, even though it still is a will and potentially quantity game, if you have a focused like that, like I call them sprints. And I've always
Yeah.
been a big fan of getting everyone. And in this case, the SDR team and the AEs are all working closed lost accounts. And then they're all going to move in. They're going to keep those and keep working those and move into all doing manufacturing. So everybody's going to row together at the same time. And I think it's really hard no matter it's your SDR or AE, if you're an SDR and throughout the day you're talking to 5 different personas in 7 different industries, how are you ever going to get subject matter expertise in that?
Yeah.
And if everybody's doing it together, then the AEs are looking or outbounding also into the manufacturing industry, and they're getting appointments from the SDRs in the manufacturing industry. And so what they're hearing all day long is the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm going to encourage sales leaders to get some sort of a sprint system in place. I just think your brain doesn't work like that, right? I don't think you can shift and be crisp and sharp. It's the same thing I say. I always tell the story of one of my most disciplined reps ever. Her name is Ashley. And Ashley, when I first became the VP of sales at the company that Ashley worked for, we were doing one-on-ones, but I say she sat me down and let me know that she prospects from 9 to 11 every morning. And she doesn't expect any appointments to interfere with that, including perhaps me or my one-on-ones with her. And so she said, and I said, that's very disciplined. And she said, it is. And I said, and why is that? And she says, because if I don't do it between 9 and 11, I'll never do it.
True.
And so she wanted sales meetings to happen in the afternoon, my one-on-ones with her to happen in the afternoon. And she did all demos and pipeline follow-up calls all happen in the afternoon. And she was super successful. And so when you look at somebody like that, and you take top athletes, right? And
Yep.
top CEOs in our country, where do they start their day? At the gym. Because if you
Right.
don't start your day at the gym, you'll never get there.
That's
Right?
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do the hardest thing first, they say, and then it's done. And so I think that practice, again, and everybody's got to know yourself, but I think majority of people are sharper in the morning, right? After lunch, after you've had lunch and you're on the back half of the day, I just don't think you're going to be as sharp. And more things throughout the day will interfere, right? You'll
Yes.
have more emails will come in, more people will Slack you. There's just more interference throughout the day.
And it's easy to put off those things that we don't really enjoy or don't look
Yep.
forward to. Prospecting being one of those for a lot of people.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
think
call
it's
it sales' redheaded stepchild.
yeah. It's really interesting you bring up close lost. I think that is one of the biggest sources of pipeline that companies overlook. That most of those deals are not really closed lost like they went to a competitor. A lot of them are closed lost because they did nothing.
Yep.
Or maybe they went to a competitor and things haven't gone well, or something went sideways, or they're just not moving as quickly as they have. How successful have you seen teams be in really going back to the closed lost deals and reworking them?
Vary for those who have, again, a formal closed lost account process in
Ah, I
place.
love it.
I'll tell two stories. Again, I'll use the same client that we're rolling out the CLAs, as they call them. And we in SaaS, we have acronyms for everything.
Right.
I asked the sales leader, can you get me the data around closed lost reasons? And 73% were no decision. We all know that apathy is the number one reason that deals don't close. By the way, competition was the fourth reason that a deal did not close. So we're kidding ourselves. We're not really losing deals to the competitors.
Exactly.
We're losing deals to no decision, change management fear, complacency, those type of things.
Inertia. Yeah.
Inertia, yeah.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I've got a client out of Buffalo with 4 new AEs in the last 3 months. We just started our close loss campaign about 4 or 5 weeks ago. We already have 5 new deals in the pipeline. We're averaging 1 to 2 new deals in the pipeline a week. And to your point, I don't call them close loss deals. I call them NRNs because we love a good acronym. Not
Ah,
right now. Not right nows.
not right now. I love it.
Not right now. They're not right nows. Like they're not no's because a no, in my opinion, a no is an unqualified prospect who should have
Mm,
never ever been on your list to call to begin with, right? They didn't have enough employees or they didn't have enough revenue or whatever your ICP your floor is on your ICP. Most of those are not right nows. You're one person away from changing jobs. You're one big problem in that company happening from selling your deals. But in order to do that, we put a formalized outreach strategy. And then at the end of that period of time, and we're not doing a ton of touches, we're doing 7 touches on those closed loss deals because one of the SDR managers asked me about it. They said, why aren't you doing 16 like we're normally doing? And I said, because these people have earned the right to not be harassed. They've been through the sales cycle to a certain point.
right.
They know who we are. They know where to find us, but we just need to stay top of mind. So we're going to go back after them again in a formalized way. We're going to touch them 7 times, and then we're going to touch them every 45 days after that. So we're going to rewarm the relationship in a formal way. And then we're going to put tasks in there for every 45 days. And the title of the task for those teammates that I'm training is do something, send something of value. I
I like
hate
that.
the check-in call. I hate it when it says check in to see what's changed.
Oh,
No,
it's terrible.
send an article of interest. I said the number one way you can add value is to introduce them to a prospect for them. So
Yes.
you talk to people all day long, right? Who could use their service? Who should they
Right.
be talking to? You can make an introduction to? People, like reciprocity is real and people want to give back when you give. I truly believe that's true. So
Yep.
do something of value that people will want to reward you for.
That's so good. And it's something that it's a shock when it happens. That it makes somebody stand out. The bar is so low, you don't have to do a lot to stand out. And when you can bring a prospect, you can add value, especially if in the context of a sales relationship. It's really easy to stand out and have somebody go, wow, when we do make a decision, you're at the top of the list.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing something different than everybody else is doing and doing it again, just putting your prospect first. That's all I'm talking about, right? Is thinking about them before you think of yourself. And if you just, it has to be all about them before it can be all about you, before it can be all about us. And if you're out there, if your true passion about sales is helping others, then it's not hard for you to put somebody else first and think about how can I help them. But I do this exercise all the time, and I say to the sales reps, take an hour on Friday afternoon. You're not going to get a hold of anybody anyway, particularly in the summertime. And I said, go into the Ethernet and find articles that you think would be of interest to them. Or when I said I subject line it article of interest, and then literally all I put in my email is thought of you when I saw this hyperlink to the article. Right? This happens all the time. I do this all the time. Former clients, current clients, prospects, other people, because I'm constantly looking for opportunities. I'm like, oh, that's super interesting. I think this person would be interested. Before I jumped on with you, was reading the 2025 Bridge Group survey and I went straight to the SDR section because I'm working with an SDR team as well, just to see. And the data has really changed between 2022 and 2025. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to send that out to a ton of people. I know a ton of people that need to see this current data because it's changed dramatically in the last 3 years. And I think the Bridge Group does a great job of gathering that information. Everybody knows when you get that email saying, hey, survey time, a lot of us fill that out because a lot of us want that information.
Right. One of the things you said was that wrong reps and the wrong roles, one of the biggest performance killers. And I
Yep.
think that's completely accurate. What is the root of that and how do we fix it?
It's a variety of reasons. And as I wrote an entire book called Selling Your Way In,
Yes.
to help reps figure out what their sales superpower is so that they can put themselves in the right seats. So I think it's a twofold problem. One, you have to get to know yourself, right? You have to understand what you love, how you love to be compensated, which parts of the sales cycle you seem to outshine others in. What comes easy to you and is hard for others? What do people come and ask you advice about? Like truly understanding your sales superpowers and the secret weapons that you may have that go along with that. And then, am I putting myself in the right industry, selling the right product or service, with the right company, with the right pricing and compensation model, and the right sales leader? And I say this is the craziest thing because we spend so much time as sales leaders and sales professionals making sure that we're calling our ICP, making sure that we're disqualifying the wrong people, and being very proactive about our approach. But when it comes to our own careers, a recruiter calls and says, hey, I got a gig for you. And you're like, really? Awesome. Tell me more. And I'm like, top 10 percenters aren't doing that, right? Top 10 percenters are reaching out to if you're an AE, you probably have target accounts, right? You have an assigned territory. You've got 10 target accounts per quarter. You're going after those type of things. And I'm like, why aren't we doing the same thing? Why aren't we taking the same strategy that we work every single day and believe in and apply it to our career? So it's a
Makes
little
sense.
perplexing to me. It does make sense, right? We're qualified to do this. So why aren't we getting our list of target accounts together? I talked to a gentleman that I had worked with when back in I have a retail background. 8 years out of college, I was a buyer for a major department store. And one of my coworker buyers reached out to me 2 or 3 weeks ago. Hadn't talked to him in decades. And he had just lost his job and was looking, and I said, tell me, like, what are you doing today? And he was like, oh, I'm on this board and that board, and I'm sending out resumes of all of these things, and this looked interesting. And I said, wait a minute. I said, I've seen your resume because I always ask them to send me their resume before I meet with them. I
Mhm.
said, looks to me like you're an A player, like you're top talent. And he goes, I'd like to think so. And I said, then why are you being reactive about your job search?
Exactly.
And he said, tell me what you mean. And I said, you should know who should need your talent. Like you've been in this industry, you've been in this industry long enough. I said, why are you reacting to job postings instead of reaching out to CEOs, VPs of sales, VPs of marketing, top people at companies that you think you could bring value to? And he emailed me a day later and said, you changed my whole perspective. on this.
So good.
Again, like from victim to victor, right? When you're relying, I talked to another woman yesterday and she's got a really sad story, but she's not worked for 24 years and her husband died unexpectedly after falling off a ladder
Wow.
and she no longer has insurance. And so she needs to work. And she was doing the same thing. When she said, I'm on 8 job boards. She listed them for me. 3 of them I had never even heard of. And I said, wait a minute, you've got skills. Because during that whole 24 years she wasn't working, she was volunteering.
Okay.
And she was in executive level positions with the Girl Scouts. She ran the school's fundraising festival 2 years running. She was in charge of the cookie sales. And so I said, when she sent me her resume, I sent it back to her and I said, hey, your email told me you did all these things, but your resume doesn't say that. You just
Mm,
put volunteerism. And I said, no, like it's not easy to sell 150,000 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. It's not
right.
easy to raise money at a festival and sell tickets to the Ferris wheel and the tilt-a-whirl and whatever. And I said, that takes a lot of organization. I said, and because it was volunteerism, like people nominated you, like people trusted that you could get the job done. And so again, she said, thank you for saying that because I didn't really feel like that. And so I think some of it is self-worth, right?
Yeah.
Just knowing your self-worth, knowing what you bring to the table and feeling confident that you can up level a team at an organization, you can add $1 million in revenue. If you've done it before, you can do it again. And so I think on the front end, it's all about you and how you feel about yourself and how well you understand what your powers are and how in what industries, what companies, what products, what service, what segmentations, SMB, mid-market, enterprise will best play to those. And then on the sales leader side, I probably interview for my clients 250 or more candidates a year. And I'm also looking out for people. And then sometimes I say to people, I go, hey, I don't think you should be applying for this job. And they're like, no, no, no. Like, I really want to work for you. And I go, I get it. But you're putting yourself in the wrong seat on the bus. What I heard you say is you want to keep what you catch. That's not this job. This is give away the baby, put the baby up for adoption after you give birth to it. Different.
Yeah.
So I think like just as a sales leader, I think sometimes when I sit in with my clients and I disqualify someone that they think looks great on paper and they like cringe a little bit and I said they won't make it. Right? I'm doing them a favor. If we had another position that's a better fit for them, we're going to interview them for that. But if we don't, I put them on the right path because they won't be successful, they won't be happy, they won't hit their quota. And I think all of those stars have to align. And I think you and I talked about previously that I get really frustrated that the only entry level position into sales is SDR, which is hunter.
Yep.
And there's
And
so
that
many
doesn't
other
fit so
roles.
many people. I mean, it doesn't, that's not their sales superpower. And if that's the
That's right.
only way in, a lot of great people never get in.
That's right. And we lose a lot of great people who either will be like, "Oh, hell no. I'm not going to call strangers or write emails to strangers." And so either they just abort and they do something else or they get in a struggle or fail and we don't and again we as VPs of sales don't say, "Hey, we need to move you over to the customer success team. You would be better on implementation." I have 4 new reps at a client I'm working with and already I've identified one of them. I was talking to the CFO a couple weeks ago and I said, "I think this one is going to end up as solution consultant." He's geeking out on the product. I'm having to literally pull him away from the product. I'm like, okay, now it's time to make calls. I'm comfortable that you're going to be able to demo it. Like you got it. Now we need to make calls so you can prove it to prospects that you know what you're doing. Like you can see things really early on. I'm like, I think he's your future sales engineer solution consultant. And he's like, the CFO's like, whoa, we're like 3 months in. I go, I know, but you can see these things. I've been doing this for 25 years.
Yeah.
So, there's onboarding and implementation specialist, technical specialist, customer success. There's all of these other roles in sales, and we force everybody through this one little tunnel we call SDRdom.
Yeah. So how do you do that? How do you identify the sales superpowers? And then also, just like you were saying, align them with the right stage, the right sales motion, the right person. How does that all come together? I think that's a very difficult thing to do.
It's definitely not easy, and it does require some trial and error. You're not going to come out of high school or college probably understanding your sales superpower. I was into my early 40s before I realized that early stage, what I call 0 to 5 million in revenue companies, is where's my swim lane. This is where I should be playing. I don't know how to take a company from 5 to 20 million. I've never done it. It's not where I shine. And so so I stay away from that. Like I'm very clear about my ideal customer profile, my ICP, but I think it's a little bit of trial and error. So you have to start somewhere, right? I got lucky because I started in SaaS, right? So I fell into a SaaS role, a SaaS sales leader role right out of retail. And I could have landed anywhere, but I got lucky and I landed in a small company reporting directly to the CEO. But I took a couple of departures. So I went and worked for, I always say my journey is how I want everyone's journey to be. So I did something for 8 years that I didn't love, wasn't passionate about, and had a really bad experience and was like, and so I had warded off Fortune 500. I was working for a Fortune 500 top retailer. And I'm like, no more. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. And so then I fell into accidentally out of that, fell into a 20-person kind of family owned SaaS business. Again, we called it subscription model. I'm so old.
Sure.
But I started as the operations manager. I didn't even know what that meant or what that was. But anytime the copier got jammed or people needed posted, they ended up in my doorway. And then at some point the owners, hey, like you've been doing some sales stuff. Let's give you why don't you hire some people and we'll let you onboard them and then we'll give them to the other sales manager. And then over time, I was managing the entire revenue stream. And I did that for 10 years, both customer success and net new, entire revenue stream, did that for 10 years. And then the next step after that was I went from a $10 million, that was about a $10 million company when I left. I went to managing a $28 million 5-department organization that was VC backed. I'd never done the VC backed thing. And then I got the VC backed bug. And I'm like, oh, like fast pace, like it fit. Immediately I could feel at home. Immediately I felt at home.
Mm.
Pace was what I like. I'm a very fast paced person. Pace was perfect for me. It was smart people, the pressure every day to perform. I literally picked the job because the guy who interviewed me, I was actually reporting to the COO and I loved him. And I thought, and then at that point I was old enough. I was 30. I was a ripe old age of 30. And I'm like, I knew intuitively that he would make me a better person and a better leader. Like I just knew working for him was going to elevate my career. And that's how important I think picking the right leader is.
Yeah.
And I knew I was right when 2 weeks later, the day before, like this company, our revenue was tracked daily and not monthly. And I'd had a killer day the day before. I had 5 middle managers, I had 50 employees in 3 states. And he came in my doorway and I was 2 doors up from him and he goes, great day yesterday. And I was like, I know, right? And he goes, how come? And I go, huh? He goes, how come you had a great day? And I just stared at him and he goes, I'll be back. And I was like, shit. I was like, I knew he was going to make me better, but I didn't want to be embarrassed in the process.
Yeah.
So like that was the next right step. And then after that, I went back to a privately held company, running full sales cycle again. And then I was like, I think I like that VC backed thing. And then from that point forward, I chose VC backed companies. And so it is a trial and error, but it was like right company. And then I made a departure. I took a job after that next job working for a VC backed company, but in the CPG space,
Okay,
selling
it's a little different.
selling holistic dog and cat food. Not sexy.
Yeah,
I'm like,
way
if
different.
software is sexy, this was the anti-sexy industry. Organic holistic dog and cat food. And I was running the inside sales team and they wanted me to run in Canada. And it was a distribution model. I didn't know anything. How I even got hired. I'm a little unsure. And so about 3 months in, I knew I'd made a mistake. And I say to people like, you can undo what you've done. And at that 3 months, I knew I'd made a mistake. And at that point, I was 100% sure that VC backed SaaS, smaller companies, startup-ish kind of type companies was where I belonged. And so I began trying to get out of that company. And 10 months later, I was gone. And I say to people, I go, I made a career mistake, but I got to check the Canada box. So I'm like, when people are like, have you done international? I'm like, I sure have.
Yeah.
Our friends to the north.
That works.
Yeah, our friendly friends to the north. But again, like I knew, and that's when I knew I knew myself well enough to know I'd made a mistake. Now, unfortunately, I didn't figure that out in the interview. And by the way, you asked, and neither did they, right? They didn't understand it either. But I remember sitting in a distribution meeting and them saying that we were no longer going to be able to sell this particular brand of dog food currently because we were out of the missing secret ingredient. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, if this would happen in software, oh, I'm sorry, we can't build that feature because we can't find somebody who knows how to do it. That's basically what they were saying to me. And I was just like, I'm
Right.
sorry, what? We're not gonna be able to sell like prairie chicken for 4 months because we can't find the secret barley. I thought it was crazy. But again,
Yeah.
like at that point, there were two things that happened, and that was one of them. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I'm like, I could miss my goal. My people could miss their quota. We could miss our target because of a missing barley ingredient. No, this is not going to be
Yeah.
happening.
I
So,
think hiring on both sides, which role to take and also hiring. I think it's one of the hardest hires to make. One of the resources you have, 10 steps to hiring rockstar salespeople.
yep.
What is the most important step? Maybe from that list, maybe from somewhere else. What step is it that founders tend to skip?
Sales professionals are professional interviewees. So buyer beware, right? And so I say to founders, like, we want somebody who's done it the way we're going to do it, first off.
So good.
Right? We don't want to train somebody on a completely new process. So the very first question I ask candidates when I'm hiring for my startups is I look at the resume and I said, "Hey, which one of these jobs do you think most closely mirrors what we're doing here?" And they'll tell me. And I said, "Great. I need you to walk me through your entire sales process from where does the lead come from to every step along the way, how long it takes, average sale. I want to know everything." Because for people who don't have a high risk profile, meaning early stage startups, your funding is going to run out. You only have so much runway if you've gotten some VC backed funding. So the closer that what they've done is to what we're going to do, that's just one less thing I have to worry about when I'm bringing them and onboarding them. I got to teach them product. But what if our process is so similar that we're just going to use some different terminology, or maybe they do a POC and we don't? So be it. We can work with that. But I'm really looking for something that mirrors, something that's similar. And I think candidates should be doing the same. If you've been selling mid-market for a while and you're like, "Hey, I want to try enterprise. I'm ready for the show. I'm ready to go to the big time." That's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine, but have you seen the signals? Are you selling at the top end of mid-market? Is your average sale that much higher than your coworkers? Have you been proving that you're inching up to where those six-figure deals are not going to be like the process for that is not going to be dramatically different for you because you've been selling things at 75,000 and going to 120 maybe is not that big a leap. And I want sales leaders to take accountability too. If you've been doing this a while, you probably intuitively know whether or not this person is probably going to be successful in your organization or not.
Yeah.
And we need to do the right thing. And I call it the mommy speech. I'm like, "Hey, Jeff, like you've got a lot of great skills here and you have been hunting. But after really talking to you for the last hour or so, I think your heart's really in something else. Or I really think you'd rather be talking to HR professionals than CFOs. I don't know that you're going to enjoy talking to our persona. I think the way your personality is, you're going to be much better off talking to a different group of people." And I think it's our responsibility as leaders who've been hiring all these years and the hundreds of interviews that we've done to say, "Hey, I think there's a place where you can be more successful." And it might not be, maybe it's in a different department in my company, but maybe it's not even in my company.
I really appreciate that perspective because it's a service to them. I think it's one of those things that's hard to do because you don't want to let somebody down, but it's much more beneficial for everybody. And
That's
especially
right.
if you can tell them the why and what is it that's not a fit and help them go find the right fit.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm never going to leave them high and dry. I'm always going to tell them what I think they should be doing. And I may even have some suggestions about companies they should be reaching out to. But
Like that.
I think people are missing quota by such a large percentage. And one of the reasons is VCs are putting so much pressure and putting unrealistic targets on companies. But the other reason I think is that AEs, sales professionals, aren't putting themselves in a position to win. And they don't really
Yeah.
understand. I don't know that everybody really understands how many different sales roles there are out there because we force them all into this SDR role.
Right.
Are you better over the phone? I hired a guy for a client up in Buffalo. And when we started to talk about outreach, he goes, "I'm a wizard on the phone. I'll send a couple emails just because it's probably the right thing to do, but I'm going to call and call because I'm just good on the phone." He knew. And so had in the interview, I said to him like, "Oh no, like Our process is only 2 calls and 5 emails. If I was so rigid about my process. And I'm
Right.
like, "Oh, but he let me know what his superpower was." And I'm
Mm,
like, "Okay, let's build you a different process to play to your strengths."
that's good.
And he's used to having we're on the flip side of that, he's struggling a little bit because he came out of a company with sales engineers. And so he's struggling to figure the product out and would love for
Yeah.
me to hire him a sales engineer. And I said, "Do you know what solves that problem?" He's what? I go, "You hitting your quota." Right? I
Yep,
mean, I
there
said,
you
like,
go.
right, this was the job. I said, "Hey, listen, like, we were very transparent that you're gonna have to run your own demos. And this is a little more of a complex product. And I'm not gonna put you in a situation where you're gonna be embarrassed or you're gonna fail. So I'm happy to give you, again, we have 4 people on our implementation team, so I can spot you some people. But I said, you need to be comfortable with the following things. These are the basics you need to be comfortable with. But again, like he knows himself well enough to know that my guess is he doesn't really have any interest in that side of the right. He just wants to do his sales thing. He doesn't want to be technical. He doesn't want to answer some of these integration type questions or technical type questions. So he
Yeah.
does know himself well enough. But he signed up for a job where he was going to have to demo the product until we've generated enough revenue with the new salespeople in order for us to get a sales engineer. I'm perfectly happy to do that.
Yeah.
But I think like those are the kind of things that I love when someone says, "Yeah, how many calls versus emails?" And I'm like, "Well, 50-50." He goes, "Yeah, I'm like more like an 80-20 guy." And I'm like,
Hmm.
"Cool. Then let's do that." Then I said, like, why would I as a sales leader? Again, I'm just there's no reason to be rigid under that. Like,
Right.
why don't we take our framework, but be flexible in helping everybody understand their sales superpowers, and then how do we play to those?
Yeah. And you mentioned quota attainment, and that's something that is really low, often less than 50%. Although if you look at every sales resume, they're always well above quota. So I don't know where that disconnect is. But
Yes, I love that too.
what is your diagnostic process for identifying, is it the person, is it the process, is it the positioning? What is it that's causing them not to be at that quota?
I think a couple of things. One, again, there are unrealistic targets out there, and my favorite interviews, by the way, are ones where they say, "Hey, listen, like I was at 50%, 70% at target, but that I was the number one rep." That combination to me, like I'm in the top 3 and we're still at 70% means that seems like a company problem, maybe not necessarily a person problem. But I think going back to your hiring rock star talent, like understanding what your superpowers are, but also understanding where in the sales cycle are you going to get the big win. Some people are great at doing the demo. Like the guy I talked about, I'm like, he's our future sales engineer. He's going to
Yeah.
kill that demo, but maybe not be so hot at the disco. Maybe that's going to be the struggle for them. But I think in general, the other thing I see people do is putting with that quota attainment is putting themselves again, like selling maybe the wrong product or service into the wrong segmentation. So maybe you need to be selling into mid market and you're currently selling in SMB. Maybe that's just not playing to your strengths. Maybe you can go up market again, like you talk to people with authority really nicely. But I think the other thing is just consistency, right? The minute we get 20 deals in our pipeline, all of a sudden the prospecting starts. So it's that it really just goes back to that discipline again. But we're
Mm,
not doing things consistently. And again, I've been living. We don't talk about it as much anymore. But like I said, I'm so old that that hockey stick thing. We did 50% of our revenue in the last 3 days of the quarter. When we did
yeah.
60% in the last 3 days of the year or whatever, like that hockey stick problem. That's just a lack of consistency, right?
Yeah.
And we know now, like I'm talking to teams and companies right now, like it's June as far as I'm concerned. It's basically June. If you've got a 3 to 6 month sales cycle, whatever you have in your pipeline at the end of June is what you're going to live with and sell by December 31st.
Right.
So are we really like planning the future and are we looking ahead? Are we understanding where we need to be? Because in some cases, I've got some companies that are higher average sales. So, right now we're talking about you need 12 to 15 deals in your pipeline. At the come July 1st or September 1st, they've got about a 60 to 90-day sales cycle, but you have to understand that. And by the time October 1st rolls around, you're done, you're locked. You might get a stray that shows up that says, "Hey, new budget, really unhappy with the current vendor," or whatever the situation is. But in general, like I get frustrated sometimes. I make my reps when I'm working with teams at the beginning of the year, you hate to work with me in Q1 because they make you put a business plan together that we should be looking at quarterly. So I want them to put on paper, like and understand and do that reverse math and understand their own personal sales math, right? Your close rate is different than other people's close rates. Your average sale is different than other people's average sales. your ability to get through the gatekeeper, my calling rock star, right? Those kind of people. So I think, and then the confidence, the self-confidence to do it, to understand where you play best and to lean in. So I always say, to really know that you can count on your sales superpower, you need to pressure test it under the worst circumstance. So I
Yeah.
tell people, I'm like, I play tennis and I played competitive racquetball growing up. So I have a natural slice for tennis. And so when I'm under pressure, I immediately stop doing topspin, which I am not comfortable doing, but I have learned to do it. And I immediately switch back to my slice. But sometimes, if the player across the net from me is also a slicer, that's the worst scenario for me. And I'm
Hmm.
going to have to change the game. Slice hates slice.
Interesting.
I love topspin because topspin, I know where my sweet spot is. And people who have topspin, the ball bounces and then I get to pick where I hit it. But with slice, the ball starts high and ends low, and I need it at my waist. And so
Hmm.
I can't do what I want to do the way I want to do it when I have to hit it at my shin. And so I have to be, so if I come up against a slicer and I need to win my court so my team can win the match, I'm going to have to put my topspin in play. But if I haven't pressure tested it under that situation where I look down the row, I'm a singles player, so I'm normally the last one off the court. So I look down the row of the other four courts, and I've got another maybe singles player coworker with me, a teammate. We're 2-2. We've won 2 matches, we've lost 2 matches, and we have to win 3 to win the match. And if you can't pressure test that under the worst circumstances, then how will you ever know you can rely on it?
Right.
And that takes self-confidence.
It does.
That's a high risk situation. And the top 10, you can see a top 10% are coming a mile away, right?
Yeah.
They walk into the room, they don't look down, they don't look around. They're trying to figure out, who should I be talking to today? They walk into a restaurant, they're looking around to see if they know anybody.
Yeah.
They just have a different stance about them. And I do think you can interview for those things. There's a lot of those things that you can interview for. I ask people, I'm in a high risk world. Like, we need people with a high risk profile to be sales rep 1, 2, or 3, right? A lot of times, half the time I'm hiring somebody, I'm hiring sales rep number 1 for an organization. That requires a lot of the highest risk profile available. And so I asked this interview question: Hey, Jeff, tell me the last time somebody said to you, I can't believe you just did that.
That's a good one.
And they're like, and I want them to say, last night at the bar.
Yeah.
I want them to be somebody who does that shit all the time, right? Where people are like, oh, he's doing it again. I can't believe he's doing it again. And they're just like, I'm so embarrassed. But he's not. He's not embarrassed. He's not afraid to walk up to a stranger. He's not afraid to do something. And those are the kind of people that I'm looking for. And again, and I said, like, some of that falls under lone wolf, renegade, right? So you have to know if my founder is going to be leading Gade, right? So you have to know whether or not they can handle the lone wolf. But I
Right.
set the expectation. I guess the other thing that we haven't talked about is going back to that accountability culture, is you can't hold somebody accountable to things that you haven't clearly outlined you're expecting from them.
It's true.
And so when I interview a lone wolf, and again, can see him coming a mile away, right?
Yeah.
And and I go, hey, and I just call it out, right? I'm just a cards on the table kind of girl. I'm like, hey, so you're a lone wolf. And so I start with, so tell me about a time when that backfired on you. When, you got alienated by your coworkers, or your boss told you to hit the road jack and gave you a box. And then I said, so let's go ahead and let me tell you how this is going to work so that you know whether you want to do this or not. You're going to start out by doing it my way, right? You're going to learn the process as it's been designed. And then you're going to come to me and tell me how you want to alter it. And then I'm going to give you 60 to 90 days to do it your way. And as long as you're getting results, you're going to get to continue to doing that. But the minute your way doesn't work, you're going to go back to doing it my way. And if we can agree on
Hmm.
that, then we can move forward. But like, you have to just, like, everything's a negotiation.
Yeah.
And I love a good lone wolf who doesn't mind asking for forgiveness instead of permission. But as long as it's ethical, again, like I say, like, you can do that as long as you're not doing something unethical. I'm not going to get called by the CEO or the cops. Like, I have some boundaries of my own. But I think there's so many things that need to be done. And I would say the other thing that if you're looking for a rock star talent, we as a industry have really leaned into the science of sales recently with
Yeah.
automation, data, AI, and top 10 percenters understand the art of sales and have special skills in that area. They don't just understand the data and know their numbers. They understand the art of persuasion. They understand the art of negotiation. They understand the art of questioning. They understand the art of reciprocity and generosity. And I think the other thing that I'm really worried about, I'm like calling it, I'm worried about it becoming extinct, is and I think it's because we in our industry in the SaaS world, we love to promote the top performer to sales
Right.
leader. But if the top performer doesn't have those art of sales skills or haven't been taught them, or that's not, or data was their specialty, the science of sales was their specialty, I'm so afraid that we're not going to be able to teach the next generation the art of persuasion. Like I did a sales training yesterday for an SDR team, and I call it question on a question. And it's just I might as well call it art of questioning, but I call it the question on a question. So, you ask a current situation question, they give you an answer. You ask a question on that, they give you an answer. You're always asking a question on the previous answer. And I could just see their eyes get really big. This had never occurred to them before. They've never been taught anything like this before. And I say to them, I said, this requires two things, like you thinking on your feet,
Yep.
because you can't. I go, don't check your brain at the door because this won't work. And I said, and it'll force you to stop thinking about your next question because you can't formulate your next question until they give you an answer.
You got to listen really well.
Active listening kicks in.
Yeah.
And I said, and here's what'll happen over time. You're going to have so much more fun than you're having today because today you're just interviewing them and you're checking these qualification boxes. And I
Right.
said, there's another way to get to business problems without asking them, what are your business problems?
Right. That's the worst way to ask.
That's the worst way to
Yeah.
ask. Yeah. How do you like you're using our competitor? How's it going for you?
What's
What do you
not
think they're
working
gonna
well? Yeah.
Yeah, what's not where are they falling down? But I love, and at the end of it, people were like clapping and this was an hour. I could just spend an hour doing this. And I'm like, hey, I warned them up front, set the expectations. We're gonna do some role play. I'm gonna teach you the technique in 30 minutes, and then we're gonna spend the next 30 minutes playing it out in your world. Like I'm gonna play you. You're going to play prospect. I'm going to play you, and we're going to role play. And then next week, though, we're going to flip the script, and I'm going to play prospect, and you're going to play
I
you.
like that.
But they just never and honestly, like the way I teach it, it's such an easy technique. I'm like, you just have to ask another question, and then I force them to get them into the habit of asking some questions that start with only the words what or how, right? Forcing it to be open
I
ended.
like that.
I call them journalism questions. So I'm like, you can do who, how, what, when. You can't ask why. That puts people on the defensive. It never goes well. But I said the two best questions, you can take any closing question and open up by putting how or what in front of it. So I force them to use how or what. And then just at some point, it just becomes habit. I've been doing this for so long that I'll track it one day just for fun. But I bet 80% of questions I ask start with how or what. It just comes natural. But I do think that art of sales, if people are looking for rock stars and if you're trying to be a rock star, art of persuasion, art of negotiation, art of questioning, those type of things, they're good books, they're good courses, but I would be spending my time. Expect that your leader will help you with the data part, the science part. AI will help you with the science part. The software that you're using is going to help you with the science part. But if you're not being provided training, and most people are not, when I ask the question, what formal soft skills training, sales soft skills training have you been provided? 80+% people say I haven't. And
Right.
then my follow-up interview question for those who are going to interview with me in the future is, so what have you done for yourself?
Yeah. That's
Hashtag
gold.
own your own shit.
Yep. That is gold.
Yeah. So I think those are some of the things that people need to be on both sides of the fence, right? If you're the individual contributor, ask yourself, am I being provided that type of training, or am I going to have to go get that on my own in order to level up? And if you're a sales leader, are your sales meetings all just full of numbers, or is one sales meeting a month a training session on a sales soft skills topic? How often you're call coaching? I did call coaching day yesterday with 4 reps, and about no more than 2 minutes into any one call, I could just stop it at that point, and I had enough to give them things to work on for the next week or 2.
That's
So,
good.
it's like all of those things have to come into play, and I just think we're relying too much on the science of sales right now.
Makes sense. Where can people learn more about you online and get their copy of Selling Your Way In?
Yep. Selling Your Way In can be ordered or online at any bookstore that you like to order your books from. I would love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know what your one nugget from today when my conversation was, so that what's your one takeaway, one thing you hadn't thought about before, one thing you're going to implement. So I love it when people connect with me and then send me a quick note and let me know what they took away.
Outstanding. We'll make sure and link that in the show notes as well.
Good.
So good. Kristie, so great having you on the show. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Thank you.
Wow. Wasn't that just awesome? Thank you again, Kristie, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Kristie at kristiejones.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. It's at Champion Leadership. We have full video episodes over there, shorts, outtakes, training, quite a bit more. And thought leaders share. Share this episode with someone who's done being busy and is ready to be effective. Yeah, it's a great conversation to build from. Everyone who shares this week gets a spritz of Not Raising Right Now. It's a VC repellent scent that smells like product market clarity and boundary setting. Anybody else get hammered week after week? What's the secret to turning your customer onboarding into your biggest competitive advantage? We'll find out next time when my guest is Sri Ganesan, founder and CEO of Rocket Lane. It's a customer onboarding platform that's setting new standards in customer experience. Sri previously co-founded Contour, which was acquired by Freshworks and became the foundation for FreshChat. His journey is one of building sticky experiences and customer delight into the product from day one. If you care about churn activation or net revenue retention, don't miss this one. Then our expert guest next week is Pete Steggy. He is the go-to strategist for accidental tech CEOs. Pete brings 3 decades of experience guiding companies from scrappy startups to global enterprises. His upcoming book is a field guide for founders stuck in the messy middle, offering practical frameworks to shift from reactive problem solving to strategic, scalable leadership. Through his firm B2B Clarity, Pete brings brilliant builders Through his firm, B2B Clarity, Pete helps brilliant builders step into their confident, high-impact CEO roles. Whether you're building your first team or navigating a pivot, Pete brings clarity, direction, and confidence to the founder's journey. So I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSFuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.